Okay, hi, my name's John Langan. I've been asked to speak today about what circularity means to me as a designer. For context, I've got 20 years in the performance sports and technical outdoor industry as a designer. But back in 1998, when I finished my degree course, circularity and sustainability were not really part of the conversation. It was much more about impact and product storytelling, really trying to get people to be excited about design and fashion. I would say in the last 10 years, sustainability and circularity in particular have become increasingly more important. And when I start to think about designing a new product, I go through 5 steps effectively. So the first one, essentially, is decision making. Do we need a product? I know this is product management and a brand decision, but even as the designer, we need to think about what type of product we're making. Why are we designing it? We know brands need to make profit, so we need to design efficiently, effectively, and really produce the right products for that market. Second is a life cycle analysis, or LCA. Again, the way we live our lives today, digitally, online, and also because of the changing weather patterns, we're kind of losing seasonality. The kind of focus on autumn, winter, spring, summer is kind of going. So again, thinking about products, thinking about the longevity of those products within a longer season, a non-seasonality point of view is really important. So for example, you could think about 1 year for a t-shirt potentially, 5 years for a trouser, 10 years plus for a waterproof, heavily constructed jacket. But the idea that extending life cycles is again something that is really starting to happen. Legislation recently has made washing machines and refrigerators much more repairable. Parts and labor now have to be, parts have to be available to extend the life of a washing machine. So when the belt goes on it, it can just be repaired. The refrigerators can just be refueled with the gas they need to keep them working. And I really think from a clothing point of view, we need to think about that as well. All the components, all the details and everything we put onto the garment, we need to think about how can we repair that. The third thing is materials. So whether that's fabrics or whether that's the trims. Obviously fabrics, we're going towards recycled, and with that kind of closed loop principle on fabrication is obviously very good. But the longevity of finding of where that source comes from is again something that's really important. We need to think about how long we can sustain this recycled yarn while still maintaining the demand. But that also goes down to the treatments and the finishings as well. So there's no point having these beautiful fabrics, these lovely fabrics, if then we're putting loads of chemicals or there's a lot of water processing, a lot of things that really aren't good for the environment. So again, looking at reduced impact through dyeing methods, that kind of thing, again, is really important. The usable width is something that is really important from a design point of view. That can affect the lay plan. Also, depending on how you're designing it, you might want to be trying to go for a zero waste product, which means you really, the usable width is really important. So thinking about how your product, your pattern is put together is again something that's really important in terms of how you can use the fabric effectively. And then coming down to the trims, so you've got all this lovely fabrication, which is obviously the main part of a garment, but then it's the zips, it's the zip pullers, it's the cord locks, it's all the little details and everything. It's looking at things that either have very long durability or they are very, very repairable. So that leads me into my point 4, which is essentially repairability and durability. So there's 2 sides of this. You can look at repairability as really important in that you infinitely make something repairable to keep the life cycle going, or that it's durable in that the product actually has inherent great durability. And that can also work on a fabric level, but I think as a principle for when you're designing is again something that's important. So one thing I always look at is constructions. So when you're constructing and designing, you're sewing or bonding something together, can that be easily taken apart if it needs to be repaired, or do you want something to be kind of almost indestructible? So thinking about that construction and being clever about it is really important. When it comes to repairability, it's what facilities do you have in-house or externally, and designing based on what you know is people are able to do. There's no point thinking something's repairable and then finding out that actually later on the construction method is not repairable at all. So really thinking about how you would repair something is actually part of the design process now. Then the end of life cycle, so upcycling products that have effectively have been finished with is something that is really starting to happen. A lot of brands are looking to that type of product. North Face, Arc'teryx, Patagonia, Fjällräven, for example, in the outdoor space. But then also looking at the fabric use up. So when you do have leftover fabrics for whatever reason, it happens with every company, either over ordering or they didn't manage to use all the fabric in the right way. That again is another principle for designing. Let's look at how we can use this fabric. It's made, it needs making into something, rather than it just sitting in the corner of a factory not being used. That also comes down to, as I mentioned before, the durability of trims. So making sure trim durability is really good, or actually that it can be easily broken down into its components to be reground. Then number 5 is probably the biggest one, is what is the impact on the planet? So there's a lot of processes that go into making garments. So trying to make sure we reduce either the carbon footprint, but also the kind of impacts that we have on the planet in general. So obviously where you manufacture is important. Obviously having a fabric in Italy and then shipping it to China and then over to the US for retail seems like a really, really bad thing to do from a carbon offset. So trying to make sure that that's taken into account and that there's not a lot of additional processes that mean a lot of different extra shipping. And then finally, things like the labels, the hang tags, do we need them? Can they be dissolvable? Can they be something that is tear out? Do we even need them? Can it be just a print? All the kind of finishing details on a product are infinitely important because those do mount up. Essentially, the idea of having something durable is my number one way to go at it. I prefer durability over recyclability, but keeping stuff in use for long is my second go-to. In other words, extending that LCA through repairability. The other way to look at it is obviously from a design point of view, having something that's completely recyclable with the lowest carbon footprint is probably the third way to go. So that mono-material principle where you're not using blends. But again, you need to make sure that all your trims, all your details are either easy to take off the garment, or they can just be ground as part of that recyclable process. So that's my 5 thoughts on how I approach design in context of circularity and sustainability. I hope this helps you guys with some of the conversations you're going to have. I would have loved to have been there, but yeah, have a good day. See ya.